What would you say if I told you that I could replace all of your weld gauges with one tool? One gauge that can give you a readout of every cross-sectional weld dimension at one time. One tool that is convenient, user-friendly, produces more measuring capacity, higher quality, and more accuracy than traditional weld gauges? You would probably say, "Show me how." Introducing the Jennings Universal Weld Gauge. This is the only weld gauge that gives you a true profile, a readout of every cross-sectional weld dimension at one time. And it fits into constricted weld joint configurations where other gauges cannot. Let's see this profiling weld gauge in action. In measuring a fillet weld, square the gauge with weld joint, conform pins to profile, press the hold button, and then read all dimensions from this one action. The legs, hypotenuse, and profile are read from the front of the gauge. Fillet throat dimension is read from the back of the gauge. In measuring a butt weld, rest the gauge on the base metal, conform pins to profile, and press the hold button. Now you may read all of the dimensions simultaneously. Base metal reduction is read on each side of the weld. Width is measured on the bottom scale. Reinforcement is read from the top scale. This base metal is at 0 on both sides of the weld. The weld is 3/8 of an inch wide. This one has 1/16 of an inch reinforcement. Underfill can be measured on the front and back of the gauge. This one shows 1/32 inch underfill. To measure a weld with high-low, set the gauge on the higher of the two planes. Lower the gauge until the pin tops are level with the horizontal lines of the gauge. Press the hold button and read from the scale. The left plane is flush at 0 and the right plane is 1/16 of an inch below 0, indicating a 1/16 of an inch high-low. To measure the beveled angle, set the gauge on the base metal and slide gauge back until the protractor is flush with the bevel. Read from the scale. This one is 45 degrees. To measure undercut with the pit gauge, set gauge on base metal and push up on the dial until it stops. Read from the scale. This one is 1/64 of an inch. To measure porosity, use the comparator on the protractor. These two pores are 1/16 of an inch diameter. For overhead, eject the pins. Keeping pressure on the hold button, press the gauge up to the weld, conform the pins to the profile, and read all weld dimensions. See how the Jennings weld gauge measures welds in constricted configurations where traditional gauges cannot fit up to the weld? Here we see several attempts to use traditional gauges. Compared to traditional gauges, the Jennings weld gauge markings are bigger, bolder, and darker, giving increased legibility and decreased misinterpretation. Laser cut using advanced linear motor laser cutting CNC machines for optimum quality. Here is an example of how easily and quickly all welds on this spool are measured. Unique to the Jennings gauge is the high quality of materials. The pins are made of 3/8 of an inch thick 16 gauge stainless steel and are very strong. Note also that the pit gauge is thick and durable, featuring a tapered tip for precise measurement. Notice that this inspector does not need to reach into a tool bag. This all-in-one system is carried securely, clipped to his pocket or belt. The gauge is made with safety in mind because it has a keychain hole to tie it off when working at heights. Let's look at the variance in cap reinforcement on this weld test coupon.
We all know that time is money. This tool is extremely efficient, allowing you to measure a higher volume of welds 75% faster. And your time is valuable. The Jennings Universal Weld Gauge was field tested for 2 years by CWIs in the energy sector prior to being released. And it's built to last in the USA with high quality steel. So, if you're ready to simplify and enhance your work and cut your weld measurement time drastically, go ahead and order your weld gauge in standard or metric at www.jenningsweldgauge.com or at your favorite distributor.